Lawyers of Reddit, at what point, when working for a defendant, did you realize, my client is a monster? My so's mother, L, was abusive. She frequently hit her husband, was a compulsive liar, and just generally made her family miserable. When they were settling the divorce, the judge initially deemed a testimony from the kids my so and her brother unnecessary, probably because they were minors at the time, and testifying against one of their parents would be hard on them, to say the least. However, the lawyer representing L was really insistent that they testify. Well, it must have been a shock to the lawyer to suddenly have two more witnesses with dozens of accounts of driving under the influence, domestic violence, etc. We figured Elle must have lied to her lawyer about some significant details, because they were completely caught off guard and more than a little angry after the testimony. We like to believe it helped solidify some of the criminal charges placed against her. It was a nice bit of karma after years and years of gaslighting and false rumors that her own lies got her caught. Classic narcissism. Can't admit any wrongdoing under any circumstances. Sometimes I worry that I'm too narcissistic, then I remember that doesn't make sense. My mom is one, and she told me a story. She was defending a man that was accused of killing his whole family with her axe and burned their bodies. Yeah. He had 3 children, ages 3, 4, and 7 and a wife. My mom said she was afraid to talk to him because he just did not seem normal at all. She said that he was very freaky and that he would just stare at her for no reason for a long time. It still haunts her to this day. He got the death penalty and she was very happy. She didn't even care about the money. My most upvoted comment is about a man that killed his family. Thanks for the upvotes. How do you go about defending someone like that? Let's say that your client tells you upfront that they are guilty of the crime. Do you still have to try and prove that they aren't guilty? You work with them on a plea bargain. You do not need this to go to trial. Yeah, that's what plea bargains were meant for before prosecutors turned it into confess to this for these charges, or go to court with 10x this much and get put away for longer because you will lose, so that every case doesn't have to go to court. Not the client, but my managing partner. The client was a senile 90-year-old man. He wanted to sell land worth a little less than $1 billion to some businessmen. Suffice to say there were many who wanted to take advantage of the situation. One such person, to my dismay, was our managing partner. The partner wanted to insert a provision that would have effectively funneled about 60% of the proceeds solely to him. You could see how his eyes gleamed at the mere mention of money. The provision got lost in the revisions. I was doing the revisions. I'm no longer part of that scummy firm. Did you consider bringing it to whatever governing body you're under? This sounds like legal malpractice. Hi, law student here. Just took a professional responsibility course. Definition: legal malpractice. Lawyers aren't allowed to acquire an interest in a client's business, except in very narrow circumstances, none of which fit the case here. I listened to a 911 call where the victim's throat was slit while on the call by our client. I will never forget her gurgling and sounding like she was dying. Somehow she ultimately lived through this, saying, "He killed me, he killed me." That is not something I ever wish to hear. I feel bad even after reading it. I listened to a video once of a 911 call with a guy in one of the Twin Towers as it collapsed on him. Years later it still haunts me at times. Physically hearing someone's last moments on earth is absolutely haunting, especially when added to the sheer dread and desperate yawn you can hear in their voice. I can't even fathom what the 911 operator felt. Just from your description I know you're talking about Kevin Cosgrove. I also listened to his 911 call just once, years ago, and it has been permanently affixed to my mind. Once was enough. I will never forget it. May he rest in peace. I've told this story here before, and I imagine it has stuck with those who read it, so forgive me for bringing it up again. My client owned a little bar in a small town, not a dive, but certainly not high-end. What started as a normal weekend soon turned into a legal nightmare that I got pulled into. He decided to host a karaoke night one weekend. Lots of people came, drank a bunch, and sang terribly. The thing is, come Monday morning, there was a problem. He didn't have the proper copyright license to have those songs performed in his bar, and the music company had an undercover person there, so they sued that monster for all he was worth. The named plaintiffs included Sheryl Crow and Jimmy Buffett. After asking plaintiffs' counsel if I could take her client's depositions, she said no. We settled the case. Thankfully he sold the bar shortly thereafter and has not offended since. So the monsters are clearly Sheryl Crow and Sheryl Crow? My general psychology professor worked for the state of Arkansas assessing criminals to see if they would qualify as criminally insane. He told us a story one time about a guy who would get glass shards and hide them underneath his skin, presumably to use at a more opportune time. He said his interview with the guy made the hairs on the back of his neck stand on end. Ivan Millett, serial killer of backpackers in Australia, inspiration for Wolf Creek, was so dependent on inducing pain that when he couldn't hurt others, he turned to self-mutilation. He partially amputated a finger, used a plastic knife to saw through the bone, and put it in an envelope addressed to the High Court of Australia, all while maintaining his innocence. I'm shocked that a plastic knife was able to saw through a bone. Must have been a long and painful experience. That's what I want to do. The psychologist part, not the glass shards part. My mom is a lawyer. This is the story about how she quit being a public defender. When you are a public defender, you don't get to choose your cases. She got assigned a young man who, with the help of his friend, had gotten a kitten from a free to a good home ad in the paper. They then brought it home and gave it to their dog as a chew toy. I think they also filmed it. So yeah. She said she needed a shower after every meeting with him. Cancelled her PD contract after the case concluded. I work for an animal rescue charity, and those free to a good home situations end badly more often than you like to think. Have heard lots of horror stories, especially with dogs, who are given away. Free animals have a far higher chance of being used for baiting, etc. That's why it's good to charge $100, so at least that way you know they had to go out of their way to make an effort, making it more likely the animal won't wind up a chew toy. A lot of years ago I used to work as a solicitor's representative. Cases go to Crown Court, barrister deals, and I'm there for paperwork, additional stuff with client etc. 70-something-year-old man had been in jail for 15 years for an assault on a child. Solicitor and barrister working on getting him released due to him getting clean reports from just about everyone. Guards took him out of jail to a dentist, and as he entered the waiting room he saw 2 children and ran straight at them. Guards stopped him 3 weeks later at court. I was the one that sat him down in a room to explain that no, this isn't a hearing to release you. It is so you can be committed to a mental health secure facility for the rest of your life. He didn't take that well. I shed no tears. Well, that's absolutely terrifying. He was obviously ill, but I wonder what was going on in his brain to instantly try and attack them. This one isn't as horrific as the murders and CP stories on here, but, as a law intern, I had to prepare a defense for a huge gov corporation who had denied employment to a man who applied on compassionate grounds. It's a gov policy where, if an employee dies during their term, then their nearest relative, parent, spouse, child is entitled to get employment in the same company. This man's father had passed away age 60 after working there all his life, and the corporation was rejecting it on a mere technical issue that there was a spelling error in some of his ID documents. In a way, this is actually much more terrifying. The people who curb stomp other people while filming and laughing are horrible, but they are extreme corner cases. The corporation denying people benefits on a technicality is something I could see happening routinely. Not a lawyer, but my daddy's. He has told me the story of why he stopped being a criminal defense lawyer. He got a case with a couple young Russian guys who were charged with securities fraud. My dad worked super hard on the case and got the guys a great deal with some probation, a finance and community service. That night the guys treated my dad to dinner, and on the TV in the bar was a news story about insurance fraud, and one of the guys said, "Hey guys, security fraud is old news, let's try that next," and pointed at the TV. That night my dad came home to my mom and said I can't do criminal defense anymore because he realized the people he was defending were truly bad people. Sometimes it takes something this small to break someone. Compared to the others here, very unfortunate overall. Well, I was going through my client's search history and I saw that half of them were Family Guy funny moments. Meg. Maybe he was playing that game where you try to find a Google search that only returns one single hit. You have to get a whole lot of zeros before you find a single. This terrifies me. I read it all the time and search all sorts of stuff, looking up things I don't understand. When I get to an interesting thread, someone spouts off that they made a bomb with cigarette ashes and flint. I'll see if it's possible. Lord help me if I ever have to have my searches public. My last search is biggest raccoon. I regret nothing. When this person, an executive, said she was firing any employee who had a serious illness or injury while promoting fundraisers at a local church for cancer sufferers, no less in part because employees, thinking she'd be sympathetic, would reveal their confidential health info to her. Isn't that super illegal to do? Well, she wasn't firing them because of their medical issues. The employees with medical issues just always seem to be poor performers at their jobs. I have a family member who used to work in the court system lawyer. Once he told me that a kid pushed their grandma down the stairs and left her there to die, laughing and taunting her when she screamed in pain. To clarify, when I say young I mean under 13 years of age. Yeah, I guess demon children really do exist. Also not sure how this case ended, since I don't think they were tried as an adult. But hey, that's the courts for. She tried to sell her baby. I found out during a hearing in front of the judge. The people who try to sell babies surprise me. The people who try to buy babies confound me. Gonna be honest here. If I was approached by someone selling a baby, I would pay whatever they wanted, then call the police. Probably would get charged with something myself, but getting a kid away from a person like that would be worth it. My client with severe mental health issues allegedly pushed a woman off of a balcony. She became paralyzed due to the fall, and she laid there for 2.5 days while he sexually assaulted her continually, she thinks, because again, she is now paralyzed and can't feel anything. I don't think he is a monster, but he is severely mentally ill and probably shouldn't be in the public. Lawyer is me. These posts appear pretty often, asking lawyers or doctors for stories. Do people not know about confidentiality? That's why people are either very vague, or you get third party "my mom is a lawyer and she told me" type stories. Neither of those are bad at all. And here you are, contributing nothing.